Ignatius Press and the Augustine Institute present The Formed Book Club. Catholic book lovers unpacking good books, chapter by chapter. If you like us, please help us by subscribing and by reviewing us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you might listen. And don't forget to sign up for weekly updates and study questions at formedbookclub.ignatius.com.
Welcome to the Formed Book Club. We are discussing In Defense of Sanity, the best essays of Chesterton. Who's discussing this book? Myself, Father Fessio, one of the editors, Joseph Pierce, and Vivian Dudro. You know, it's hard for me not to read ahead as we prepare for this because I love reading Chesterton. When I got to number 27, the Pickwick Papers, Appreciations and Criticisms of the Works of Charles Dickens, which we'll cover maybe next week. But so I better go back and reread Pickwick Papers, you know. So I did. I started reading it. And I want to quote this from page 74 in my edition. Here's what the narrator, Charles Dickens, says. There are very few moments in a man's existence when he experiences so much ludicrous distress or meets with so little charitable commiseration as when he is in a pursuit of his own hat. A vast deal of coolness and a peculiar degree of judgment are requisite in catching a hat. A man must not be precipitate or he runs over it. He must not rush into the opposite extreme or he loses it altogether. The best way is to keep gently up with the object of pursuit, to be wary and cautious, to watch your opportunity well, get gradually before it, and then make a rapid dive, seize it by the crown, and stick it firmly on your head, smiling pleasantly all the time as if you thought it as a good joke as anybody else. There was a fine, gentle wind, and Mr. Pickwick's hat rolled sportively before it. Now, what does that remind us of?
That's great. One of my predilections is looking for sources in works of literature. You know, what the intertextual sources that an author's use. That's a perfect example there. Clearly that's Chesterton's source.
Yes. So
that
for those
in real life, because as we know, art imitates life and life imitates art, right? So,
Really.
Sounds like a vicious circle or a virtuous circle to me, but I believe we are on the essay called The 12 Men. Is that correct?
It is correct.
And I'm not sure. We should just proceed, I guess, and anybody who wants to talk about a particular essay may do so, and whoever doesn't may not do so.
Sorry, please.
I think this one is a particularly contemporary, relevant essay.
mm-hmm.
Joseph, but you're about to say something.
Well, basically, great minds think alike. I was just going to. It's not one of the essays I've actually want to focus on particularly, but what it has to tell us about the danger of trusting experts with the most important things, and the fact that experts can't actually see the thing itself because they become too accustomed to it. And I was just going to add to that the other problem with experts is they're such specialists that don't actually see where their field of expertise fits into the bigger picture. So, I mean, as regards our own COVIDious times, for instance, you know, people that are experts in disease control are going to give that advice based upon controlling the disease, but they're not going to be experts on the ramifications of the methods of control on the wider society because that's not their field of expertise. So when we then worship the experts, we're actually worshipping a very myopic, narrow view of things.
Interestingly, on page 49 at the bottom, he says, the trend of our epoch up to this time has been consistently towards socialism and professionalism, that is, ruled by experts.
Yep.
Yeah, and big government working together. Socialism and professionalism. Big government and experts working hand in hand.
What's also great about this chapter is it's another example of Chesterton taking a very common and commonly overlooked thing in life and causing you to look at it in a fresh way. In this case, the jury. You know, how many of us just take for granted the jury system that we have in our society? And his pointing out that it's precisely not a panel of experts that gives it its genius, that makes you appreciate it more than you did before.
Yeah, and of course the conclusion is that little spin or twist in the tale when it wishes anything done which is really serious, it collects 12 of the ordinary men standing round. The same thing was done, if I remember right, by the founder of Christianity.
Yes, brilliant.
Well, I want to spend a little more time on this. I'll go back to you took the last sentence, Joseph. I want to go back to the first sentence, typical Chesterton. The other day, while I was meditating on morality, I mean, okay, who wanders around meditating on morality? Well, Chesterton does.
Right. Well, I like him. I have no idea who Mr. H. Pitt is, but that's almost Python-esque. You know, the other day, while I was meditating on morality and Mr. H. Pitt. So I don't know who Mr. H. Pitt is, but to meditate on him certainly brings up sort of Monty Python type images in my mind.
Okay. Well, then, this is a little longer quote, but I want to read it because I think it's important. Page 50 at the bottom there, new paragraph. Now, one of these 4 or 5 paradoxes, which should be taught to every infant prattling at his mother's knee, is the following: that the more a man looks at a thing, the less he can see it. And the more a man learns a thing, the less he knows it. Now, that's a paradox. The Fabians were socialists in his time, argument of the expert that the man who is trained should be the man who is trusted would be absolutely unanswerable if it were really true that the man who studied a thing and practiced it every day went on seeing more and more of its significance. But it is not. He goes on seeing less and less of its significance, that is, its relation to everything else. In the same way, alas, we all go on every day, unless we are continually goading ourselves into gratitude and humility, seeing less and less of the significance of the sky or the stones. Now this is a new paragraph for him, a new section. Now it is a terrible business to mark a man out for the vengeance of men. But it's the thing to which a man can grow accustomed as he can do other terrible things. He can even grow accustomed to the sun. So the idea is you're used to seeing criminals, you're seeing crime and so on. And so, you begin to see it no longer as a human being, but as a specialist, where you want a jury that's not seen this all the time to try and judge this on the basis of their common experience.
Yeah.
Sherlock Holmes, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, through Sherlock Holmes, has a very interesting comment that a doctor gone bad is the worst kind of person. And it's precisely because the more he looks at a human body as a thing of study and starts to have to accustom himself to inflicting pain and discomfort and things like that, a man can get used to that. And that's a terrible thing for a man to have to get used to. And we see the same thing with police officers and criminal lawyers and soldiers, and this kind of desensitization to the pain that you're inflicting, which might be necessary to do the job of a doctor or a butcher or a cop, but it comes with great risk, actually.
Yeah, I mean, and switching subjects, but on the same point, a politician gets so used to spinning the truth to win the election that basically lying becomes customary and truth becomes something he doesn't really understand any longer.
Yes.
Well, and to take a different subject on the same theme, I've had said for many years that, when America was first, the church began her expansion here, you had to have pioneers who were very vigorous men who made decisions and so on. But after the church was established, who became bishops? Well, the people who, were made friends with people who got along well and so didn't have a lot of enemies and so on, which is a wonderful thing. But the problem is you get some young, kind of zealous Catholic priest who says, well, for the good of the church, I want to prepare myself to be a bishop someday. But I want to do that so that I can, bring back the church to this authentic, and primitive type of zeal. Well, okay, so to do that, he says, well, I better get along, I better be careful and not be controversial and, be nice to people who I disagree with. Well, that forms habits. And if this person with a good intention, who had holy ambition to become a bishop for the good of the church, develops those habits, then guess what? Once he's a bishop, he's going to act like the other bishops he was trying to reform when he was a younger priest. Anyway.
Absolutely.
Vivian.
Well, back to this point about experts, when I was a young mother raising young children, I was always dubious of books on child rearing written by people with PhDs in child psychology, but no children of their own.
I know. There was an old Reader's Digest joke. When I first got married, I had 6 theories on raising children. I now have 6 children and no theories.
That's actually very good. I'm going to steal that one.
That's really good.
So, should we move on to the shop of ghosts?
Yes,
and your introduction with Dickens is a great introduction to this chapter, isn't it, Joseph?
It is, absolutely, and this was one of the ones that I did actually select. I mean, obviously there were three people selecting these, and some essays were selected by more than one person. But I don't remember if the other 2 selected this. But this is one I remember selecting. It's a great favourite of mine, and it's an essay that's almost also a short story. In other words, it's almost fiction.
Yeah, not almost fiction, you say? I think entirely fiction.
Well, I think the vision of the toy shop in Battersea was real. I think that then allowing his imagination to run away with him was real. And then he talks about the whole thing, such a language that, yes, we move into something. And the sort of language, it was as if I had stepped across some border in the soul. Okay, so he's allowed this optical illusion of the shop window becoming a brilliantly lit stage, top of page 53. The lit shop window became like the brilliant lit stage when one is watching some highly coloured comedy. I forgot the grey houses and the grimy people behind me as one forgets the dark galleries and the dim crowds of the theatre. So now he's suspending his disbelief. He steps through the wardrobe, through the looking glass, has this mystical experience. But I think it's rooted in a real moment,
all right.
In real life Battersea,
Okay, I concede.
But what I love about this, just to summarise it without reading it, that he wants to buy one of the gifts, and the old man there with the beard says, "Oh no, I don't sell things. I just give them as gifts." And he says, "Good heavens," I said, "what can you mean? Why, you might be Father Christmas." "I am Father Christmas," he said apologetically, and blew his nose again. And then Father Christmas says he's dying. And then we have these various characters from history, starting with Charles Dickens, going right back to Robin Hood, who speaks in some sort of mixture of Norman, French, English. Going right back to the medieval times, and various like Ben Jonson and other people, and he's always appeared to be dying. And this is what Tolkien would call as a Christian, seeing history as the long defeat, with only occasional glimpses of final victory. And Chesterton's point is that that it always seems that the Christianity is losing, that the wicked, worldly people are in power, that this is the end. Surely we can't hold on this time, and yet 3 centuries later we're in exactly the same scenario as we were 3 centuries ago. And he's showing that that you always die. That the point at the end is when Dickens says, "I understand everything now." That you say you're dying. That I understand. He cried, "You will never die." So again, this beautiful understanding of the perennial struggle between the world and the devil, the prince of this world, who's always winning in terms of politics, terms of who has the seats of power, whether it's in the church or out of the church, and yet never wins. It never wins because ultimately Christ is not going to be defeated.
I can't add anything to that. I first put a big question mark, in the title page of this show. What is this all about? Because it's partly essay, but it's also largely fiction. And so it just kind of, caused me to wonder what's going on here. But, I see the point now that you've explained it so well. Vivian, do you have anything? If not, that's okay.
Well, I just love this line on page 55 where Chesterton says to Father Christmas, "You may be dead," I replied. "You ought to know. But as for what they are doing, do not call it living."
Yeah, absolutely brilliant.
That's priceless.
And one other quick thing on that before we pass on, the difference between Father Christmas and Santa Claus. Obviously, they've been sort of fused. But Father Christmas actually goes back to the medieval Passion plays. And it was actually during the time of the Puritans when they actually banned Christmas, the Puritans. Yes. That Father Christmas then became, if you like, a symbol of resistance of Merry England and Catholicism against this godlessness, godlessness. So again, Father Christmas is rooted in Catholic history and also in Catholic resistance to those who are trying to kill Father Christmas.
Yes. When my children were little and I was teaching them English history, I would say the only thing you need to know about Oliver Cromwell is that he outlawed Christmas.
Right. Yeah. The White Witch incarnate, huh?
That says it all. Well, and of course, the other man that he got fused with in the American experience, Santa Claus, is just a abbreviated form of Saint Nicholas.
Of course. Mm-hmm.
And he was a real person.
Right.
And it's just the commercialization of these things that have given us this absurd, what we call Santa Claus now. But it's good to reclaim Father Christmas and Saint Nicholas.
Absolutely. You bet.
Yes.
That's right. And that's why it's important to have Christmas still as a national holiday, even if it's commercialized and so on. Because even the idea of, there's something we should be thankful for. Maybe we should give gifts to each other who've given so much to us. I mean, that's not a bad thought to have at least once a year.
Right.
Yes.
So onward to A Romantic in the Rain.
This use of images here is just marvelous. Just marvelous. All the things he does with rain. From just a literary standpoint, talking about, on page 58, the forests are apparently enjoying it, the rain, that is. The trees rave and reel to and fro like drunken giants. They clash boughs as revelers clash cups. They roar undying thirst and howl the health of the world. It's just such a marvelous thing to do with trees in a storm.
Yeah, and it's not just beautiful imagery; it's beautiful English.
No,
yes.
Right, and I can see myself, imagining storms like that I've seen, and then seeing Chesterton there watching them, and then reveling in them because of the way he describes them. I mean, it's really he makes things more alive for us. It seems to me, at least for me.
Yes, and then this other use of images on 59. This is one of the real beauties of rainy weather, that while the amount of original and direct light is commonly lessened, the number of things that reflect light is unquestionably increased. There is less sunshine, but there are more shiny things. Such beautifully shiny things as pools and puddles and macintoshes. It is like moving in a world of mirrors. It makes me actually, the next time it rains, want to just go outside and enjoy it. One time I was driving through the rain in my neighborhood here, and there was a little boy about maybe 8 or 9 years old out in the rain with no raincoat singing, "I'm singing in the rain, I'm singing," and he's literally splashing the puddles with his feet, and he's opening his mouth with his tongue. And I just thought, is that just the most precious image of childhood? And heaven forbid that anyone should tell that child he's being childish, right? I mean, the window for him to be able to do that is so brief. It was just glorious.
That might have been me that you were seeing, because I remember doing that. Maybe I don't know how. I might have been older than a child when I did it.
Well, that's the whole point. If we remain childlike, we can still do that, and that's the beauty of it. Do you remember, Father, for instance, back in Hurricane Charlie in Florida, where you actually suggested that you and I should just tie ourselves to a tree so we could actually experience the hurricane, right? And if I'd been a single man, I'd have said, let's do it. But I thought that's probably not sensible when I've got a little baby boy.
Well, now that you remind me, I actually did. I didn't tie myself to a tree. When the hurricane came right through Ave Maria, the heart of it came through there. I went outside, and I walked into the wind, 80, 90 mile an hour wind, whatever it was. I was concerned about, bricks coming in. I kept my eyes open and everything, but it was a warm, beautiful rain. And I just said, wonderful. Come at me. It was wonderful.
Right. So this is Father Fez, who even then, nearly 20 years ago, was not a child in the physical sense of the word, but certainly still childlike, which is delightful.
If not childish, yes, go ahead.
Make two other comments about this if I can. One, a literary connection, the other, just a personal reminiscence. So, first of all, the way that the essay finishes, the final couple of sentences, 3 sentences. But wherever trees and towns hang head downwards in a pygmy puddle, the sense of celestial topsy-turvydom is the same. This bright, wet, dazzling confusion of shape and shadow, of reality and reflection, will appeal strongly to anyone with a transcendental instinct about this dreamy and dual life of ours. It will always give a man the strange sense of looking down at the skies. Let me say one thing. This is a very large part of the imagery of the man who was Thursday, which Chesterton wrote back 2 or 3 years before he wrote this essay. And what Chesterton's using is the puddle as something which turns everything upside down. In other words, the paradox, making us look at something from a completely fresh angle, standing on our heads, or looking down the puddle and seeing the sky beneath our feet makes us stand on our heads. So that whole imagery, the paradox, is a large part of the central imagery of the man who was Thursday. And the other thing I want to say is that this is an aphorism of Chesterton that changed my life, literally. Right? This one sentence about umbrellas, disparaging umbrellas, right? Shut up. This is page 59, about 6 lines down. Shut up. An umbrella is an unmanageable walking stick. Open, it is an inadequate tent. Right? Not only do I love that, but I am actually, since first reading that when I was probably about in my early 20s, I've spurned the use of umbrellas ever since. It changed my life.
Well, I'll make an allusion here to C.S. Lewis in the third of his book of his trilogy, That Hideous Strength. And Joseph and Vivian, you can correct my faulty memory here, but there's something in there in the beginning where I think it's a rainy, stormy day, and someone says, oh, this weather. Oh, I love this weather. You love this weather? Well, yes, I love weather. You love weather? What kind of weather? Oh, just weather. I love weather, So it doesn't matter if the sun is shining or it's raining or it's cloudy or snowing. There's something good to see in it. And Chesterton is a man who can do it.
Yeah. Well, you know what the Norwegians say? There's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothes.
That's like, I sent around a cartoon this weekend about a couple looking for a house, and the real estate agent was there, and the couple said, well, we'd like something more expensive. And the real estate agent says, well, I'll come back tomorrow, I'll show you the same house.
Yeah.
But my friends in Michigan, remind me that if you don't like the weather, just wait an hour and you'll get something different.
Yeah.
All right. So should we move on to the mad official?
By all means.
I
have nothing I want to say on it particularly, but
well, you will pretty soon, because I'm going to quibble with Chesterton here.
Okay.
And I expect you to defend him. But on the bottom of page 61, the first page of the chapter, he says in his paradoxical way, a nation is not going mad when it does extravagant things, so long as it does them in an extravagant spirit. Crusaders not cutting their beards till they found in Jerusalem. Okay, so that's a non-mad nation, right? Jacobins calling each other Harmonious and Epaminondas when their names were Jacques and Jules. Well, are we giving that example as France as a nation that has not gone mad?
Well, actually,
a nation is not going mad when it does extravagant things, as long as it does them in an extravagant spirit. Well,
I'm not going to defend Chesterton. I actually wrote an article some time back called "Arguing with Chesterton," and it was exactly on his romantic view of the French Revolution, which he actually got from Belloc. Now, by two decades after this, they'd both basically turned their back on this romanticizing the French Revolution. But in their early work, you do see this romantic understanding of the French Revolution. And again, in The Man Who Was Thursday, he says the one thing that's never mad is a mob. I thought, you sure?
Yes.
I mean, the mob is always mad, quite frankly.
Yes.
The one thing you're never going to find in a mob is sanity.
That's Chesterton taking his democratic spirit too far.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And I appreciate his democratic spirit. I appreciate his rooting for the little guy, his true esteem for the common man and all the rest. But even that can be taken too far, and you end up with a mob. Yes.
And his biggest weakness, and Belloc's biggest weakness, I say, is their romanticizing of the French Revolution, at least in their early writings. It's less so in their later writings.
well then,
But his other point about people growing used to their unreason is an important one in this essay, right? On page 63, when they give birth to a fantastic fashion or a foolish law, they do not start or stare at the monster they've brought forth. They've grown used to their own unreason. And I think that sure is true.
Yeah.
So I have a few things to say when we get to this next chapter, the Mystagogue, which is I think a phenomenal chapter. But I'll yield the floor first to anybody who wants to take it.
Well, I'm focusing on the following one, the Architect of Spears. So I'm happy to cede the floor to you, Father, or Vivian.
Go ahead and start, Father.
Well, I mean, I'll start at the end to page 68 to see if I can get any resistance here. But I've always been, like C.S. Lewis, kind of the last medieval man. I like art that is representational. I like poems that rhyme and have rhythm. And so when I find him saying this, who really knows art, new paragraph on 68. Now, the eulogist of the latest artistic insanities, parenthesis, Cubism and post-impressionism, and Mr. Picasso, close parenthesis, are eulogists and nothing else. And he continues, they circulate a piece of paper on which Mr. Picasso has had the misfortune to upset the ink and try to dry it with his boots. And they seek to terrify democracy by the good old and anti-democratic muddlements that the public does not understand these things, that the likes of us cannot dare to question the dark decisions of our lords. I'm sorry. Amen, brother.
Let me say something here, if you don't mind. I read something about the Conservative fairly recently about this episode of Batman, the 1966 TV series Batman, where it's an absolute lampoon of modern art, and they actually have various modern artists, and one has a monkey who just throws paint at them. canvas. Another one, gets in a bath of paint and comes out and rolls on the canvas. And everybody, it's a lampoon. It's absolutely, and this is 1966, at the height of the Andy Warhol and the rest of it. It really does show the power of comedy to prick the preposterous elitism of these movements.
Yes.
But
Yes,
but
and they
Vivian, you're
deserve
pretty
to,
good at defending some things which there are some good qualities in them which maybe I miss. But would you defend Cubism and Post-Impressionism and Picasso in any way?
Would I?
Yeah,
Yeah, I would.
I figured it.
in this sense that the artist is attempting to communicate something, and often, maybe not always, but and so I do try to understand it I do try to understand what the artist is doing or saying, even if it's in a form that aesthetically doesn't please me, or I have the intellectual curiosity or whatever it is to try to figure out what they're saying, why they're saying it. I mean, part of Picasso's dismantling of the human form has also to do a little bit with the project of modernity to dehumanize and dismantle the human person. And so what you see in the art is something really quite ugly about modern warfare, modern society, and so on. Now, I also happen to believe that Picasso was something of a pervert. So, I'm not.
And also something of a mercenary, because there are stories about Picasso where he would, at a restaurant, doodle on the back of the check and then sign it, because he knew the check would never then actually be cashed, because it's worth more because Picasso's doodled on it than it would be if they cashed the check. I mean, this is, you could, the best you could say is he's got a sense of humor, but I actually tend to think he's just
well, it sort of reminds me of the Charlie Chaplin skit where he has a fly on a string and he eats the majority of the soup, then tosses the fly in the bowl, then calls for the waiter to take that bowl and bring him another one, and then throws the fly back. Okay, so, this is not. Just because I try to see what Picasso might be saying. Now, he does a lot of very warped, perverted things as well. I mean, I don't even need to describe them to you because it's profane to do so. But so I'm not defending the man Picasso. I'm not talking about the man Picasso. I'm just talking about some of his. So anyway, that's all. I
would also, Vivian, defend some 20th century modern art. One of my favorite artists, this is confession time, is Salvador Dali. Now Salvador Dali also did some perverse things in art that we wouldn't want to describe or discuss. But on the other hand, his Crisis from John of the Cross has become a classic of religious art. And he certainly did have the ability to depict things realistically. He had the craftsmanship, the draftsmanship. And he was a genuine artist, and he was moving in the right direction. I mean, he returned to some sort of quixotic practice of the faith. He certainly opposed communism very vigorously. So, I think we would be wrong to just dismiss, anything from post-impressionism onwards as bad. I think most of it is.
Well, but I don't judge. What am I trying to say? I don't necessarily engage the art just because he's moving in the right direction. He might be moving in the wrong direction, but there still might be something there to see, to hear, anyway. And that's how I engage art. But not everybody.
Well, no, but I mean, I'm very primitive in this. I look at the art itself. I don't care who did it or when or why or what his motivations were. I want to see, is it something beautiful? Does it strike me as something valuable? And there is, I forget who did this, a study on Picasso where he had these, off and on relationships with women. And when things are going well with the woman he was living with, I mean, all of a sudden the feminine forms were kind of integrated and whole and beautiful. And then when they broke up, there was a problem. Then all of a sudden they got dismembered.
I actually saw an exhibit of that very thing. It was an exhibit of Picasso's notebooks. And this was exactly what they showed, because it was not only these sketches and the studies that then became paintings, but also some of his writings and rantings. And this is exactly what it showed, that when things were going well with his mistresses, his art took this kind of form. And then when they were going badly, so, I mean, I find that fascinating. I enjoyed the entire exhibit. I looked at every single thing that was there. And, but, you know.
So
well,
Joseph,
I was just going to do what I usually do and just, be time monitor and suggest that we've had half an hour. But then, then we have to decide what we want to do because we didn't get obviously up to the essay 20.
No, but I was going to say, because you have some things you want to say about the architect of Spears.
Yes.
Let's start with that next week.
Okay, how far do you want people to read, though?
I don't know, 10 more. We should always try and say 10 essays ahead of where we are.
Okay, so if that is 15, let them read up to maybe 25, The Meaning of Dreams.
Actually, 24 would be 10. That's right. We're 25.
I know that.
All right. So thanks, everyone, and we'll hope to see you next week. Anybody who's left still watching or listening to us. See you next week from the Forum Book Club.
If you enjoyed this discussion, please help spread the word about the Forum Book Club by subscribing to the podcast and writing a review. You can sign up for weekly updates at forumbookclub.ignatius.com.